Let's go one-on-one with White House National Economic Council Director Larry Kudlow. Larry, wonderful to see you again. Now, the president tweeted this out earlier today. Let me read the tweet for you. Very good numbers on the economy, much potential for growth, trade deals being negotiated or being set up for negotiation. We have been treated very unfairly, to put it mildly, by other countries for many years, but that is changing! Exclamation point. And we heard the U.S. trade delegation has spoken to the Chinese delegation by phone this afternoon. So where do trade talks stand right now, Larry?
Well, let's say of the new round of trade talks that was agreed upon in Osaka, Japan, these are preliminary discussions. Staffs will be meeting. Details will be poured over. Probably visitations will be arranged. I'm not here to talk about any specifics. I'm just saying this is the restarting of a process that was going pretty well with a lot of headway, as you know, and then kind of stopped out in May when we believe China and their team reneged on a number of agreements. So they're restarting, and that's a good thing. The Kudlow axiom, better to talk than not to talk.
Absolutely. I was getting the sense, and maybe this new news goes against that idea, that the Chinese were kind of waiting as long as they could to see how our political race was working out, maybe thinking that they'd deal with somebody other than Donald Trump if he loses the election. Was there any of that politicking going on from their perspective?
Well, no, certainly not in these talks. I mean, look, I can't confirm any of this sort of Chinese thinking. If they think they can wait until 2020 November, I think that would be a very big mistake on their part. And I think that kind of thinking would probably do great damage to these trade talks, okay? We expect some progress on this. I mean, look, President Trump agreed with President Xi that it was time to continue the talks that were temporarily suspended in early May. Furthermore, President Trump agreed not to raise any additional tariffs. And on top of that, President Trump agreed to allow certain American products, techie products, to be sold to the phone company Huawei, so long as there's no national security implications. So that was a pretty accommodative position. Having said that, we have a very strong, I want to underscore this, a very strong expectation that China will really shortly, maybe immediately, begin to purchase U.S. agricultural products. That is a strong expectation that the president and his team holds. So far, we've not seen it, but we are waiting to see it. So let me just say, David, if the Chinese side believes it can wait until November 2020, they'll be making a big mistake and will do damage to these talks.
Well, particularly when you look at what's happening to their economy, you look at what's happening in Hong Kong. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why they need a deal. I'm just wondering about specifics on the agricultural part of the deal. Did you focus on soybeans? Because, of course, the soybean farmers are really hurting.
David, I love it when you ask specifics because you're such a great reporter, and you understand that as director of the NEC, I cannot talk about specifics. But it's great fun to go back and forth like this. I've been in your shoes, and others have been in my shoes, so we all live and learn and gain greater wisdom with our age.
But it does sound like we are closer, much closer to regaining our momentum in the talks. And if that is so, I would think that we'd have a deal before the election, no?
Oh, I wouldn't want to make any such forecast. As the president has said, and he actually said this back in Osaka, we're interested in a quality deal, what's great for America, as he often says, covering lots and lots of ground, both structural ground, tariff ground, and so forth. We can do those topics again if you wish. But speed is not an issue.
Yeah.
Quality is the issue. And so I make no forecasts on that and reiterate this view. There's no timetable, none of that stuff. They're moving along piece by piece, and they will wind up going line by line, as they did last winter and spring.
Yeah, they are into those details. Let me bring it to another trade deal, which is USMCA, NAFTA 2.0, whatever you want to call it. The congressional ratification of USMCA is forefront in the minds of many. You kind of surprised folks by talking up Nancy Pelosi and your deal-making with her or negotiations with her.
Always.
Do you think it will be possible for all of the problems we're having, Republicans and Democrats in Congress, that we could get a ratification before the election?
Well, these are some of my favorite topics. I'm awfully glad you asked. And let me say right at the outset that Speaker Pelosi on this subject has been very accommodative, working well with Ambassador Lighthizer, our trade ambassador, on a bill which is absolutely a bipartisan deal and was designed as such. It's a template. I believe it's the best trade deal this country has ever generated. She's allowed him to speak to the Democratic conference. They've broken it up now into individual groups with Democratic leaders discussing matters with Ambassador Lighthizer and his team. So she's been very helpful. Yeah. Now, as to when, where, how, and why, look, I think Lighthizer has said many times he will wait for her to signal for a vote. Mm-hmm. And we surely hope there will be a vote. We believe there's great support for USMCA. And if I may, David, just very quickly, okay, the economic growth impact of USMCA is enormous. Priced out by the International Trade Commission, CEA looked at it, NEC looked at it. We could be talking mid-range, a half a point of extra real GDP per year. A half a point.
That's huge.
The difference, for example, between 2.5 and 3, or 3 to 3.5, or 3.5 to 4, it's enormous. And along with that, the potential for 180, 200,000 new jobs per year, $100 billion of additional direct investment, not just portfolio investment, but direct investment in our factories, in our technologies, and elsewhere. This is a deal that has very strong new domestic content rules, helps manufacturing, helps farming, open markets, and in the new economy, it has the best intellectual property patent laws ever put down, agreed to by both sides.
But the bottom line, could we get the deal before the election? Could we get ratification?
Of course we can. Okay. And it's our great hope. Yeah. And look, it's our great hope that we will get something this year. I think it's not a stretch to say it's our great hope we'll get something this summer, but we await Speaker Pelosi's leadership on this. And as I say, she's been very helpful.
Larry, I want to talk a little bit about the great economy, even without those deals, because the numbers were extraordinary on Friday. You and I talked about it on Friday. Strong economy, as strong as the economy is, as roaring as it's going, core inflation is coming down compared to where it was in December. So you have this roaring economy with inflation coming down. So if inflation is coming down, why aren't interest rates coming down?
Well, look, market rates have come down tremendously, right across the yield curve.
So do you expect the Fed to cut rates when they meet in July?
The market is signaling the Fed to lower rates. And by the way, historically, frequently, most of the time, the Fed does follow big market rate moves. I mean, 10 years collapsing, 5 years, and so forth. The yield curve is inverted, as you know. That is to say, the 10-year and the 5-year are well below the Fed funds rate or the 3-month T-bill rate. As you probably also know, price signals, inflation signals in the market, things like the so-called TIPS break-evens, right? The market rate less the real rate. Shows an inflation on the CPI of only 1.5%. That would be close to 1.25 on the PCE deflator. So look, you have strong growth, but the price signals are showing that we should take back the rate hike of last year, maybe take back several of the rate hikes last year. The goal here is domestic price stability. We need to watch out about excess disinflation or even deflationary commodity indexes. The Phillips curve is broken once again. That's the fourth time in the last 4 decades.
Larry, since you've been in my position, you know this very well. When the person in my ears starts to talk, no, I just have to ask you one final question. It's got to be quick. It's got to be quick.
I'm just saying the market is predicting a Fed rate cut.
Okay, no, absolutely it is. But the great Art Laffer, who you and I have talked about ad infinitum because we love him so much, he questions whether the Fed should be independent at all. Do you share his questioning of whether the Fed needs to be a little more responsive to what elected officials think?
Well, look, that's pretty tricky. I have not talked to Art. I meant to talk to him earlier today, but I got caught up in a lot of meetings. I'm not sure precisely what he meant. Now that he has
he said clearly, he said, I don't understand why the Fed is independent, to be honest. That's pretty clear.
But now that he's gotten the Presidential Medal of Freedom, he doesn't call me as much as he used to. But that's okay. I'm a humble guy, and I will be happy to call him. He did note that actually constitutionally the Fed reports to Congress, right? The value of money thereof, Article 1. I'm not sure where he was going with respect to the president. Look, at the risk of misinterpreting Art and so forth, let me say this. I believe the long custom of the Federal Reserve to be an independent agency should remain intact. I believe that. That doesn't mean the Fed lives on another planet, but it also means, I think, their operations day to day, week to week, month to month, they are an independent agency. That is a tradition. History shows that independent central banks tend to do better than those that are ruled, perhaps, for example, what's happened in Turkey.
That was a very clear answer.
I can't really. I'm going to interpret Art and probably come back with more. Maybe you and I can have this discussion. But the Fed is independent by tradition. But it does report to Congress, and let's not forget, the president appoints the governors of the Federal Reserve Board.
Yeah.
So in that sense, there are linkages to the executive branch and the legislative branch.
All right. My time reprieve has just been retracted. I can't go any longer with you. But you've got that means you got to come back and see us again after you speak to Art.
Anytime.
Larry Kudlow, great to see you.
That's if he returns my call.
He's getting too high and mighty now. Good to see you, Larry. Thank you very much.